Can you set the record?
We are all set.
All right. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today to our very first International Conversations event. And so Colorado Technical University and University American College, we have joined forces to make this event possible for all of you today. And so we have wonderful people that have joined us today. We have wonderful panelists, and I'm sure all of you are going to get so much out of this experience today. All right. So one thing I do want to include right away is the views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers who do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent. Okay. Had to get that out of the way. So anyway, so here's our agenda for today's event. We are going to be going through several different topics, as you can see here. And yes, we will have a 10-minute break, so that way you can get up and stretch the legs before we continue on with the remainder portion of our event. So we would like to have some welcoming words from some folks who have been tremendous with all the support that we have been given to pursue this event today. And I believe Jeff Arnold, I know that you're not on the slide here, but we would love to have you say a few words. If he's able to take himself off of mute.
There
Oh,
we
is
go.
he?
There we
There,
go.
you got it? Okay,
At first
good.
he told me I wasn't able to unmute, and I tried it a different way, and so
Oh, okay, good.
So we accomplished that, but it won't let me do the video. But you don't need to see me anyway. But yeah, I am here, and I'll be sitting in on the whole thing, and we're very, very pleased from the DMD standpoint. I talked with both Janet, who's the president, the chairman of SBD, Sigma Beta Delta, which we also manage, and Delta Mu Delta with Bernice as well. They both know about it, and they're very excited about it as well, too. So thank you for allowing us to help co-host and to promote it. And I'm glad it looks already like there's some pretty good numbers there. I see the participant numbers down there. So I'm here. If you don't see me, but call on me, and I'm listening in and anxious to take part. Thank you.
Wonderful. And thank you, Jeff. And thank you and to your whole team.
Thanks. Thanks so much.
And with me today, I have a co-moderator, Voidan.
There you go.
And we'll have you get started.
Well, thank you very much, Trish. It's an honor and a pleasure to be a co-host of this event. And with that being said, I would like to welcome the Professor Dr. Snezhana Hristova, which is the Dean of the School of Business Economics and Management at UACS, to have her welcoming words to this meeting. So welcome.
Thanks much, Voidan. Dr. Trish Eli, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues and dear students. I want to once again welcome you to this amazing event, International Conversations between University American College Skopje and Colorado Technical University. And as I said at the beginning, informally, although we are miles or kilometers apart, I think that today we are quite united by the technology, and we are surpassing this physical distance to come here and to be together for this remarkable event. So many participants. I'm very glad to see all of you here. We have this unique opportunity to share knowledge, ideas, and perspectives. I want to address especially the students and to encourage them to take the full advantage of this unique platform, to share your insights, challenge your assumptions, to embrace the diversity of this event as well. Let this be a space where your ideas will flow freely and where we will inspire one another to reach some new heights. So before we started with the panelists, I want to also extend my heartfelt gratitude to the organizers, Delta Mu Delta, to all colleagues that were really that put hard effort to enable this event, to the speakers and participants as well. Very much grateful that you accepted our invitation and made this event possible. And I think that the dedication of all of us here and hard work are truly commendable. So let's embrace this chance to connect, to collaborate, and create new opportunities. And let's make more bridges of collaboration. I really look forward to host you here in Skopje. And why not a summer school in Skopje? What do you think? So thank you. Thanks again.
Thank you. Wonderful. And we also have Dr. Bruce Stutter with us. He is the Dean of College of Business and Management at CTU.
Thanks,
Bruce?
Trish, and welcome everyone. I'm just so thrilled to be here today and see this event come to fruition. In a world today where we seem so divided by our differences, it's so incredible to be a part of something where we're all coming together around something that's so important to all of us, the field of higher education and the sharing of knowledge and the sharing of ideas and the sharing of views. And I think this is just an amazing event. A first international conversations event that started with just an idea and a conversation that we had about how we could reach out and expand what we do at DMD, and it's turned into this. I hope this is only the first of many of these events to come, and I hope it's only the first of many collaborations with University of American College Skopje. So welcome to all of you that are here. I encourage you to take a full advantage of this event, to share those ideas, to listen to different perspectives, to join in on the conversation. Help us bridge those gaps and bring our universities, our colleges, our countries, our world closer together. And I just can't wait to hear what's going to be talked about today and the ideas that are expressed. So to all of our participants, thanks for being here. I hope you enjoy it. To our partners from Macedonia, it's so great to be here with you. And I hope, as I say, this is only the first of many events and many collaborations that we undertake in the years to come. So I'm going to turn it back over to Trish and let's get started for the day.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Stutter. And yes, this will be first of many. Okay. So without further ado, we're going to get started here with our first panelists. And so I am going to introduce Dr. Lester Wells. He is a university professor and international business and marketing consultant with over 20 years of global leadership experience, has taught MBA students worldwide, led multinational marketing divisions, and advised governments on economic and industry strategies.
And with the Macedonian counterpart, I would want to welcome Borko Handievski, which is a partner at the consulting firm Oliver Hyman, and he is an expert in management consulting in the public sector. We are delighted to have him with us today. So the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
All right. To help our speakers today, and also just a wonderful reminder, different type of leadership styles that can be seen across the globe. But for assistance today for our panelists, we wanted to make sure that we have the questions up. So we have pre-prepared questions. So we are going to let Dr. Wills and Borko take it away.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trish.
Thank you. I'll let Borko start.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Lester. So what are we going to talk about today in this 25 minutes? We'll talk about global leadership. Now, the emphasis in the discussion is going to be on global. Everything that you're learning or have learned or about to learn about leadership stands, and we will not go into those topics. We will only focus on the global element and what does it mean to be global. So what is global leadership then? Global leadership is leading in the context of a multicultural environment. In business, or for that matter, also in government, which I do a lot of work in, a multicultural environment can be observed in two ways. One, the members of the organizations, the employees of the organization, are from various cultures, or the stakeholders of the organization are of different cultures. So the stakeholders for an organization, if it's a business, could be either suppliers or buyers or customers. For a public sector organization, it would be other entities that the organization collaborates with, which are outside from a different country and therefore a different culture. So we want to share our perspectives, and I'll share now my perspective about what it means to be a global leader. Before I do so, the question is, why should you be in this session and giving the 25 minutes of your time to us? Why global leadership should matter to you? So the answer is quite simple. If you aspire to be a leader, the odds are you will need to be prepared and trained to be a global leader. Why? Well, let's look at the biggest companies of the world. So if we look at the Fortune 100 companies, 9 out of 10 of them are present and operate in multiple countries, and many of them operate across all continents. Even if you expand the list to the Fortune 500, you still see that vast majority of companies today are operating across geographies, across countries of their headquarters, across the borders of their headquarters, which means they are in touch with other stakeholders or clients who are coming with a different perspective, with a different culture, with a different way of doing things. Then 30% of what the world's businesses produce is sold to another country. So the chances are you will either have a customer in your future role as a leader in a business organization. You will either have a customer in another country, or you'll be buying from a vendor in another country. Third reason is that today, more than 160 million people work outside their home country. And this comes on top of everybody else who is from a different culture, but is already, let's say, has become a citizen of a new country, but carries the culture from where they come from. And of course, to all of you living in the US, that's all too familiar, given the large share of immigrant population living in the US. So with this context in mind, why is being a leader not sufficient? Well, we see, or what I came across at least, what Harvard Business Review study found is that 70% of failed international ventures cited that the reason that for the failure is cultural misunderstandings. So 70%. That's how important it is to be able to lead in a multicultural environment, because you can be great at all the other aspects of leadership and fail on understanding others. So that's why we are talking about global leadership today. Now, I'm here speaking because of my privilege to have spent most of my working career operating in such an environment. So I'm from Macedonia, North Macedonia. I've lived on 3 continents, Europe, US, and now Asia. I've learned 6 languages in my life, not all of them to the same level as my English, unfortunately. And I've traveled to more than 70 countries, much of this through my work, which basically put me to be in other cultures and be able to operate in such. Then I asked ChatGPT to tell me what are the 10 most diverse private and public organizations. And I saw a past employer on each list. I spent 6 years with McKinsey. which has employees from more than 150 countries, from 150 nationalities. And I spent 10 years with the World Bank, which is proud to have an employee from practically every nationality on our planet. So I will leverage this background and experience to share a few things about what does it mean to be a global leader, and help you prepare for this journey of becoming future global leaders. So first, what does a success as a global leader require? It requires two things. So one is understanding diversity. So basically understanding and managing diversity. So being conscious that if you're working in Shanghai, Sao Paulo, or Stockholm, or Skopje, you will encounter different practices, different perspectives, different cultures. The second thing that it requires is to not just understand it, but to thrive in the diversity and complexity. What does that mean? It means that a multicultural environment will be, by definition, more complex. The challenges you face as a leader will be more multidimensional. They'll have additional dimensions because of the cultural aspect. So being able to thrive and be excited to solve such problems in such an environment is really important, because you will not be able to avoid it. So now, how do you become a global leader? So I'll share 4 traits that I have observed that global leaders have, and I'll share some examples of how I had to deal with or I had demonstrate such traits in my work experience. One is around cultural intelligence. This is about, at the most basic level, just knowing that people from different cultures are different at the most basic level. And then beyond that, having the curiosity to learn about how people are different and have different cultures and different practices and different values. And then the ability to adapt your leadership style to these diverse contexts. So this is the first important trait, which is about just simply knowing, understanding, and expanding your horizons. How would you do this? Well, you would do this in few ways. One is to study languages. Study languages, that means by default you will get to interact with more people and in their language, which will force you to learn more about their culture. Then second, basically, is travel. By traveling, you get to see and experience firsthand how others operate in a very different environment. Then, even if you don't travel, interacting with people from different backgrounds and being curious about the differences helps you increase your cultural intelligence, gets you to be more open to new ways of thinking and new ways of doing things. For me, I've spent, as I said in my introduction, a lot of my life studying languages, traveling, and having friends from people from literally every continent of the world. That has happened through my personal interests and by design through my work, because in my time, throughout all my career, except my first year, which I was at the Central Bank of Macedonia, which was not very diverse, the rest of my 20 years of career have been in multicultural teams where I get to practice this building and expanding my cultural intelligence. Second trait is about adaptability. The world is changing very fast, especially if you're looking at the world as a whole and not just your own place or your own country. Because even if nothing is happening in your own country, in other places things are happening, and that affects you. So as a global leader, you must embrace that uncertainty and change and adapt to it, and adapt to the way of how things are done in other countries. I remember on adaptability, I remember the stark difference in cultural practice that I observed when in the World Bank I moved away from working on Central and Eastern Europe to working on East Africa. So I was in Washington, D.C. I hadn't visited Kenya yet. And I was introduced to my colleagues there through a video call, and then we started basically working. And I started working and starting communicating with them, started sending emails, and I was not getting any responses. I started sending more emails, and I'm not getting responses. I started sending reminders on my emails, and I'm barely receiving any responses. And I thought, I'm the newcomer, there is some tension, they don't like to work with me. There is something that that is not working out because the communication is 90% one way. So then I sit with a friend who started working on the same region, East Africa, way before me, and I shared this. I said, "There's something wrong with my team in Kenya. They just don't respond to me." And then he told me, I'm sure they do like you, and what you're observing has nothing to do, at least with what you're doing, with them liking is because it's just a simple fact. They prefer phone conversations. That's the way of working in that part of the world. And as soon as I picked up the phone, everybody was super friendly. I adapted. I reduced my emails or send them after having a phone conversation and not before. That's an example of adaptability. How do you build this adaptability? By embracing differences, embracing uncertainty, and seeing those differences as obstacles to tackle, not as excuses to avoid having that exposure. So that's the one important element of adaptability. The second important element of adaptability is to introduce flexibility in decision making to allow you to be adaptable in how you operate. So that was point number 2. Point number 3 was about empathy. Empathy is extremely important when people have diverse ways of reading and understanding things. So emotional intelligence is really your superpower in such an environment. Empathy builds trust, even across borders. It can build trust and empathy even through a Zoom call such as this one. So one way we show empathy at our firm, what happened a few weeks ago with the crisis in Lebanon, we have a lot of Lebanese colleagues. Because as a firm, we are very conscious about as global leaders, immediately we realize that many of our colleagues are affected by what's happening back in their homes and they have family there. So we immediately put in place a communication that everybody who is Lebanese and who is affected by the crisis could take some time off, help them if they need help with bringing their family members, whatever they needed to make the crisis and what was happening less bad. And that empathy was shown at an organization level and also at an individual level with any team. How do you build empathy? You practice active listening. You try to put yourself in other people's shoes, and you seek feedback from others, even if they're not willing to proactively share it. So that's on the empathy. The final part is a bit about being a big picture thinker and being a visionary thinker. Global leaders see the globe as their land of opportunity, not their country. I observe in Macedonia when I go home and when I talk to leaders, business leaders or future business leaders, young entrepreneurs, I often notice, especially in the tech and startup world, that is an area of interest, many of them think small, in a sense that they think they have this solution and that they will solve this problem on the Macedonian market. And the solution is fully digitized. So the customer may be your neighbor, but you're going to serve them digitally, just as you would serve the person in Australia. And I wonder, why do they just look at the Macedonian market, which is so tiny? Why not look at the regional market at least, if not the global market? So that thinking needs to be there. I mean, take the extreme, be like Elon Musk. He's not even thinking about the planet as the market. He's thinking about the solar system and going after Mars. So how do you build this visionary thinking? By learning about the rest of the world, following regional, global developments, being informed about markets, what's happening not just in your hometown, local market, in other countries, looking at trends, trying to understand the world in order to find those opportunities. I will pause here and pass to Professor Lester.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm smiling as I'm listening because I have a list in front of me of various things about global leadership, and he went through every one and ticked them off. Active listening is so important. Communication skills, not being judgmental, adapting. But one of the things I've found traveling around the world and being in the global leadership role, you can prepare all these things, but it's often the little things that trip you up. You're aware of the big things, but the little things can catch you out. I've lived and worked in a number of countries. Most of them speak English, but I've discovered just because they speak English, it may not be your English. And I've developed a phrase, just because we speak the same language, don't assume we speak the same language. The same words and phrases can have different meanings, different objects can have different names, and it can get very confusing sometimes. Now, I'll talk a bit more about a personal journey in terms of what are the pitfalls. Well, for a company, if they are going to select people to travel around the world, they need to have a very, very good personnel system. They need to understand what each manager they have working for them, what their skills are, what they're really good at, what they're not so good at. So they can then say, okay, we need somebody with this skill set in France. There's this guy in Brazil who's got that skill set. Let's move him. Or there's this lady in Australia and we need somebody in Japan with that skill set. Let's move them. So they need to be able to understand all the good things about their people around the world. But there's some issues that it gets very expensive. You're moving people from country to country, but you're not just moving the individual, you're moving their family. You've got to provide all sorts of support for them. Now, I know from my perspective, it actually can be quite challenging as well. And that's one of the reasons why there is a relatively low success rate in this. Now, I'll give you an example. I was called into the office of my boss on a Friday afternoon. I worked in the investment division of the subsidiary of an Australian company, and I was working in England. So I was working for the Australian company, their English subsidiary, in the investment division. Friday afternoon, my boss calls me in and says, I want you to go to our head office in Melbourne in Australia. And I remember looking at him and thinking, what? He then explained they wanted me to get extra training. They wanted me to learn new things. What do you think? And I remember, sorry, what did you say? He said, go home, think about it, but don't talk to anybody else. I went home and thought, what do I say to my wife and my young children? That was a difficult conversation over the weekend. So I then went back and said, okay, subject to talking to our parents, it looks okay. He's stressed, don't talk to anybody else. Telling parents is not easy, trust me. Telling your friends is not easy. And then getting through organizing everything gets more and more complicated, even though the company's supporting you. And then when you arrive, well, I remember my reaction. We left England. It was -8°C, about 17 degrees Fahrenheit. We arrived in Melbourne on the first day. It was over 40 degrees or over 100 degrees. It was like walking to a brick wall. We were met by a person from the HR department, taken to an apartment. And I remember as we were driving along thinking, what have I done? We slowly adapted. I then went into the office and started to learn new things. But my family didn't get the support I got. My wife had to learn all these things herself. She had to find new networks. She had to find out where places were, how things worked. I was in the office. I went through various things. I got some support. If I heard once, I heard 1,000 times. That's not the way we do things here. I had to learn to adapt and adapt quickly. Some of the other pitfalls, you feel isolated. It disrupts you from your family. Everything is new. Everything is different. You are there on a temporary contract, 2 to 3 years. So you're not really staying there, but you're not on vacation. So you're in this limbo in between. You're trying to adapt, trying to learn, but you've also got ties to home. But you find friendships change, your old friends drift away, you're building new ones. But you're always reserved because you may leave them behind soon as well. I've known a number of people, and I'm sure Borko is the same, who get moved to one country and then get moved to another country, then get moved to another one. It's a bit like being in the military in that regard. You're never sure where you are, what is acceptable. You're trying to adapt and learn, but you're not quite at home. I had the misfortune of being in the investment division when the crash of 1987 happened. That had a traumatic effect on my company. Friday afternoon again, it's always a Friday afternoon, I got called into the office of my Australian boss and said, our company's been hit very badly. We're having to make cost savings. You need to go back to the UK, which was a shock. This was this was what, 2 years into my 3-year contract. Our permanent residency had been sponsored by the company. They'd bought us a house. So that was all linked to my company. Once again, I faced, what do I tell my wife? That was an extremely difficult weekend. I learned on the Monday, my boss from the UK was coming out to see me. Later on that week, in fact, it was the Friday afternoon again, he called me into an office he had there and said, the crash has caused so much damage, we are selling the UK branch. You have no job to return to. So I had no job in the UK. They did buy my house in the UK. I needed to get out of the house I was in Australia. I needed to find a new job and get someone to sponsor me, which I did. So there are pitfalls, but the chance of being offered a new life, a new adventure, seeing new things in another country is exhilarating. Would I change things? No. It's been hard, it's been challenging, but all that work has meant I have grown as a leader, I have grown as a person. Unfortunately, I'm one of many who have gone down this journey who've ended up divorced. That is another one of the pitfalls. It puts a massive strain on family relationships. But as I said, I have gained so much experience. I have gained personally from this journey. Looking back, I think the positives outweigh the negatives. Now, in terms of differences, have I noticed differences? Yes, all sorts of things. Again, it's often some of the little things. I remember when I lived in the UK, much more formal. If I would go and see my boss, I'd put my jacket on. Did that in Australia, and people thought I was nuts. Why are you doing that? If I would go out to lunch, I'd put my jacket on. In Australia, why are you doing that? Go to meetings in England, there's a little bit of chit chat, but not much. You get on with the meeting. Go to a meeting in Germany, straight down to business. They don't believe in wasting time. In fact, places like Norway, they don't actually know what chit chat is. They get books on how to do that sort of thing. Go to Australia, lots of informal chat before a meeting, very mateship, very buddy. Come to America, different from the UK, not quite as formal as the UK, but not as informal as Australia. another thing I found, I also found when I was working in Japan, consensus leadership. It's a group leadership. They tend to make group decisions. So if you're in a meeting, they may well leave and decide as a group and come back. When I was in Holland, I got caught out because I'm used to quick decisions being made. But in Holland, I discovered, again, they have a consensus approach. They will go and discuss it, and they want everyone to agree. That was the first thing that caught me out. But I caught out a second time was once they've made a decision, my gosh, they move quickly, very, very quickly. Again, you've got to learn to adapt. I also found interesting things about language. You have to be careful what you say and make sure people are understanding what you mean, and what they say may come across differently to you. So again, you need to ask, you need to communicate and make sure you're all on the same page. Now, in England, if you, as an individual, do things well, you can say something about it, but not a great deal. It's, if you go on too much about it, it's called gloating. People don't like it. In Australia, there's a thing called the tall poppy syndrome. If you have a field of poppies, they're all at the same level, one sticks up, that one will get chopped down quickly. In Australia, if you do something good, you don't make too much noise about it because you will get chopped down. I come to America, and this Dr. Ellie will know I'm reluctant to tell her when I have the good things happen. I send her an email saying, this is a bit hard, but I think I should tell you this. I've had this feedback. It's alien to me, but I'm trying to adapt. I've only been here 12 years and I still find it hard. It is something you have to adapt to. So all these little things can create some fun and games for you, but it's part of the learning process. So being involved in global leadership offers you amazing opportunities, offers you all sorts of challenges. You have to be flexible. Uncertainty is common, and you have to adapt. But so does your family. And too often, that's where the real problems lie.
Dr. Wills, thank you so much. I'm trying to make sure I'm cognizant of time, but both of you, wonderful stories. I think we have time for one question and then we'll be moving on to the next panelist. So I believe this question is for Borko. Could you please share some cultural specifics about Macedonia or Dubai?
Cultural, wow, it's okay, let me be short. I'll talk about my home country. If you go to Macedonia, building on what Lester was saying about the level of formality, you need to be very comfortable with doing a chit chat and doing actually business conversations in outside the office, be it over coffee or lunch or what we call kafana, restaurant. That's where it's part of the culture. People are friendly and they prefer to be in this informal environment and informal setting. So coming over is luckily a good thing for anybody who comes over, even from somebody from Norway. Even if they don't know what to talk about, they'll at least listen. The Macedonian host will be more than happy to share about what we have as a country and what we offer as a culture. So yes, that would be one difference that you will experience in Macedonia, especially compared to the US.
Thank you. And Dr. Wills, thank you so much too for addressing the family aspect. I don't think a lot of people even consider that too. How much of a big component that is when making a big decision to move. So I bet, did your kids enjoy it though? I wonder.
Yeah, I unfortunately I've ended up with one of the things I was afraid of. I have a daughter in Australia. I have a daughter here, so you do end up that. They grew up and they enjoyed the Australian culture. We all had 3 passports. which makes it interesting. But yes,
that's
they
fine.
loved it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So thank you again, Porco and Dr. Wills. We truly appreciate your insight, your experience, everything that you shared with us today. We really appreciate your time and attention to this event today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you all.
Yes,
Thank you all to the audience, most important.
Yeah,
Thank you for joining us.
All right, so we did our Q&A, and so now we're going to be moving to market corruption from a global perspective. And so with us today is Dr. Perry Han. Let me pull, I'm sorry, 1 second. I just had it. There we go. All right, Dr. Perry Han, he's a university professor of marketing and a chair of the European Council for Business Education Board of Commissioners. He has taught in 8 countries, authored over 100 peer-reviewed articles, and received a Fulbright scholarship for teaching and research in Nepal.
Thank you, and I'll introduce Zoran Martinovski, who is the president of Prime Blue Institute. He has over 25 years of experience in sustainability, private sector investments, and has been the country manager of Macedonia and Montenegro in the International Finance Corporation. So welcome to you both. I'll have the stage.
Wonderful. And we'll just move forward with the questions here. And so we do have the questions up here just to help our panelists for today. So who would like to start us off?
I can start. Is it okay for me to share my website?
Yes.
Okay.
You know what I'll do? I'll do a stop share so that way you can share.
Okay.
Website.
I can find my.
You
Okay.
got it. Very good.
Yeah, so as my introduction mentions, teach in the U.S. I've been in CTU for about 15 years part-time and worked in another university full-time where I spent a lot of time mostly in Europe, but also in Southeast Asia, teaching and doing administrative work. A couple things from a kind of the American perspective initially. Corruption itself obviously is a problem. It isn't fair to the companies that aren't participating or that are left out when corruption goes on. It adds to the cost of things, obviously. I mean, that's sort of the obvious, I suppose, thing about it. And from an American perspective, one of the things that American businesses and individuals who are working in other countries should know, that there is a law that's an American law called the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, all right? The FCPA. And what the FCPA was passed in the late 70s, and what it says is that American companies are not allowed to pay bribes to government officials in other countries, all right? Well, that sounds simple enough, but the problem is that's not necessarily the case in other countries. And there are a lot of times American companies that feel like they're at a disadvantage because they've had to follow along with the FCPA as opposed to not. I always tell a quick story too about when I was teaching in Poland one time, and we were talking about some kind of a case study of an American company, and they had to take into FCPA into account when it came to being whoever they were doing business with wanted them to pay a bribe. And I had a student sitting in the front of the class and kind of had this kind of disgusted look on his face as we're having this discussion. Pretty soon he looks at me and says, "You arrogant Americans." And he said, the Americans think they can get away with not having to participate in this kind of corruption because of this law, and the rest of us have to deal with this. And then his point was that Americans somehow think they're better than everybody else, or think they're arrogant because they can hide behind this law. I had never thought about that ever before he said that. And every time I've ever taught a class or that comes up outside the US, I'll ask the students that question, and none of them really say anything, but they get these little smirks on their face, or they kind of, nod along. I guess they're not the only ones. It never crossed my mind that was the case, right? So when companies decide that they want to engage in some kind of international trade, exporting or whatever it happens to be, it's important for them, I would argue, to find out something about the country they're going into from a corruption standpoint, how corrupt the country is considered, and how likely you are to have to deal with some sort of corruption in that country. The organization that most people think, first of all, for American companies, the first place I always suggest going is to the Commerce Department in the U.S. at trade.gov. They're an organization that's there to help American companies engage in exporting, right? And most countries today have some similar services that are available to their, and I'm not familiar with Macedonia's service in this area, but it makes sense if you think about it from a country standpoint that they want these companies to export because it's good for their economy, right? Provides jobs, provides taxes coming back in. I'm not sure about Trump's tariffs generating the taxes he's talking about. That's a different story. But the concept is that it makes sense to do that. So when a company thinks about it, they go to after you've talked to the local, or I'm sorry, when you've talked to the people in the Trade Department, and by the way, every state in the U.S. also has a state version of this, which is always kind of interesting that the state and the Fed both kind of do these kinds of provide these kind of services. So this Transparency International is most well known for a thing called the Corruption Perceptions Index, the CPI, right? And what they do is once a year they go through and they ask people in these different countries a series of questions, and there's a number of the methodology we don't want to get into because it's kind of beyond the scope of what we're doing today. But then they rank the least to the most corrupt countries in the world. So, and you can always go in. It's easy enough. For example, if you're thinking about doing business in Macedonia, right? Here's Macedonia. It's got a score of 42 out of 100. It's ranked the 76th out of 180 in terms of being corrupt. Okay, and this is kind of a quick example too, comparing it to the United States. If you're coming that direction, it's got a score of 69 and it's ranked 24th compared to the other countries that are there. So again, now what's I think kind of interesting about this corruption percent, it's been the standard, it's been the thing that people have looked at for years and years. Transparency International, very interesting organization, a nonprofit, and it exists to try to deal with and try to find ways of trying to end corruption, but limit corruption and provide information to organizations that are thinking about doing business in other parts of the world in terms of corruption. Okay. Now, a few years ago, a woman by the name of Yinyin Ang came along and said, I don't like the way that the CPI is conducted. Her argument is that it's way too crude. In other words, the CPI is basically how corrupt do you think this country is? Very corrupt, not very corrupt. And there's a kind of her point is it's way too crude of a way of measuring this. So what she's done over the last few years is created a new way of measuring this called unbundling corruption. And what she's done is she's broken this down into two different areas, elites and non-elites, in terms of who's engaged in the corruption and whether it involves just plain old theft or whether it involves exchanges. Okay, so again, you can see how this lines up. So non-elites that is stealing something from somebody is petty theft. If they're stealing something from some organization or at a higher level, it's grand theft. Mostly what we tend to think more about are these exchanges, right? And she calls them speed money versus access money, okay? And that's kind of the example that, I mentioned with the FCPA. I always get a kick out of the FCPA has an exception called facilitating payments, right? And I've never exactly understood exactly what that means. I always give an example. I had a friend who was doing business in Ukraine, set up a techie company in Ukraine a long time ago, way before the war, and told the story about when he got there, they were setting up the company and the local government controlled the electricity. And it was a company that was mostly doing programming and that kind of thing. So he needed electricity right away. And they said, we're busy. We're not going to be able to get electricity for 5 or 6 months. Well, that wasn't acceptable. And he said, well, that isn't going to work. And he said, well, they said, if you happen to give us 1,000 US, we can have it hooked up tomorrow, kind of thing. So the question kind of becomes, is that a flat out bribe, which is kind of what it looks like, or is it a facilitating payment? Are they just saying, hey, you're getting better service because of that? I mean, if you think about it, even in the US, sometimes we pay more to get better service. I mean, flexible pricing is not unusual in that case, right? The most interesting part, I always think of what Ang did in terms of this is, and where a lot of her research these days is focusing, is on what she calls access money, where elites are involved in the exchange. And the example that she uses is lobbying in the US, right? So if you're familiar with the way this works, organizations, let's say some group that represents the universities in the US go to Congress and try to convince their congressperson or their senator that they should be voting for some kind of bill that provides more funding to the colleges and universities in the US, right? It's done all the time. It's part of the way the government works in the US. Well, her argument is that that's really kind of a form of bribery. It's perfectly legal. She's not suggesting it isn't legal, but she's sort of questioning this idea about whether it's really okay or not and whether we should care about it or not. And so I've actually got some of my PhD students working on a couple of different projects in terms of this stuff. I think it's a really interesting way of kind of breaking down the corruption stuff as opposed to the more crude ways that she talked about them before. So with that, I will turn this over to my colleague and co-presenter Zoran, who I know is going to talk about some examples of things he's seen in developing countries in terms of corruption.
Thank you, Perry. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. It's always a challenge really to speak about such an important topic, but I'll try to provide insights about market corruption from my personal experience with this pressing issue that impacts economic development here in the Balkans and business and overall governance. I will talk about specific challenges in fighting market corruption in emerging markets. I will also speak a little bit about the Balkans region, including the Western Balkans region, and finally, share some interesting stories, I believe, for the American students about North Macedonia. So the Western Balkans is the region I know very well through my 30 years long business career in various sectors. I've been in international trade in the early days of my career. Then I moved over to management consulting and spent 20 years as a development banker for the working for the IFC, International Finance Corporation, but providing direct financing to private sector companies, and also I've been involved in execution of PPP, public-private partnership transactions across the region. I've dealt with pretty much the governments of all the countries in the region, so I've witnessed a number of corruption cases. I recall a number of situations which are very difficult to summarize and present in such a short time, but at the end of my presentation, feel free to ask me any questions, and I'll try to provide specific answers. So to put things into perspective, let me point out some interesting facts about corruption in the Balkans. First, I have one anecdotal example how corruption is being defined here in this part of the world. I remember I attended a regional conference in Istanbul, Turkey, where one of the keynote speakers was a gentleman called Rahmi Koç, one of the most prominent Turkish businessmen, and at that time probably one of the richest people in the world. So he was part of the panel with few other high profile, government officials and business people. And well, he asked the moderator was asking him about, what is corruption, how it's been defined. And he said, what do you mean? Tell me in terms of percentages, what are we talking about? 5%, 10%, 20%? And the moderator didn't have a specific answer. And he said, look, here in the Balkans, everything which is below 20% is not considered corruption, but it's considered as bakshish or tipping. So have that cultural aspect into consideration. Another caveat about Macedonia. I mean, what connects the United States and North Macedonia is a document issued by the U.S. Department of State. It's actually a blacklist of citizens of foreign countries that includes government official and business persons, which are sanctioned for alleged abuse of power, bribing, and significant corruption. The U.S. government typically is banning them entry to the United States and usually to their immediate families. Sometimes freezing their assets as well. And on this blacklist, Macedonia actually scores very well. Among others, so we have a former, prime minister, which is convicted for various crimes, now a fugitive in Hungary. We have 2 deputy prime ministers, of which one was announced earlier this week alongside with a senior judge. We have 2 city mayors, the former head of secret police, and a dozen of prominent business people. So again, I don't want you to create a wrong picture about the country, but in fact, this is the reality that we are facing. About a few observations about corruption in emerging markets. The World Bank, as a credible source of analysis, in their assessment about high level of corruption in developed markets and in less developed markets, actually concludes that although no country is was able to completely eliminate corruption, and we are seeing it also in the West, shows that the level of corruption in countries with emerging markets economies is much higher than it's in developed countries. And there is a map of Perry talked about the various indices, how corruption is being measured. This particular corruption perception index actually colors the map of the world, and you'll see that the Western countries tend to have a lighter color, meaning that the corruption there is relatively smaller than compared to the emerging economies and underdeveloped markets. So what can be concluded about corruption? Just few lines. That corruption leads to high prices for lower quality. Corruption in the way deals are made, contracts are awarded, or economic operations are carried out, leads to monopolies and or oligopolies. So basically, those business owners who can use their connections or money to bribe government officials can manipulate, policies and market mechanisms, leading to higher prices and lower quality. Secondly, is the allocation of resources is inefficient. In best practice, companies, choose their suppliers via tender processes. But even these tender, apparently transparent tender processes are being sort of compromised by the actions of corrupted, or I would say, as a result of unfair, illegal tenders. And these tenders typically involve kickbacks. Also, corruption leads to uneven distribution of wealth. Corrupted economies are characterized by disproportionately small middle class and a significant divergence between the living standards of the upper class and the lower class. Additionally, where corruption is prevailing, it leads to lower stimulus for innovation. I mean, why innovate when you can actually take shortcuts and access, key decision makers, and win contracts that otherwise you wouldn't be able to do. And what is also an important implication is a shadow economy. In corrupted economies, a shadow economy actually has a major impact on how, on the general business conduct, but also on tax revenues and the business culture that is being created in these economies. Also, corruption leads to low foreign investment and trade. Foreign investors. I recall through my direct engagement with a number of FDIs. Their perceived, I would say, approach towards the business environment in a particular country basically impacts other prospective investors. So individual cases of corruption experienced by particular foreign companies. The message is being spread around very quickly and impacts the appetite of other FDIs to come into the country. And also corruption leads to poor education and healthcare and so on and so on. Now, as mentioned, I wanted also to reflect on specific challenges related to corruption in the Western Balkans. The situation is more or less similar across the 6 non-EU Western Balkans countries, meaning Macedonia, Albania, Serbia, Montenegro, Bosnia, and Kosovo. Pretty much you have a very similar, I would say, challenges faced by all of these countries, but also the new EU member states, Croatia, Romania, Bulgaria, they also know, I would say the long tradition of corruption is still present there and remains a significant obstacle to good governance there. Like, for instance, I recall, the time when Croatia entered the EU, its former PM, Sanader, ended up in a jail like in few months after Croatia became an EU member. We were all surprised what's going on, but this is really the influence of the membership in the EU with regards to the scrutiny of that larger, I would say, family of countries, and another good reason why about the benefits for becoming an EU member. But as I said, the corruption is still present in Croatia. Like, also a couple of days ago, their health minister was arrested, and about a suspicion for massive corruption involving procurement of drugs and other services for the health sector. And Bulgaria is not much different. Now, let me just conclude my, I would say, observation about the corruption. If there is one critical area where corruption is manifested, is the public procurement. Public procurement, constitutes a major portion of GDP. It varies between 15 to 30%, even more in some cases. So how public contracts are awarded, it's very, I would say, interesting, I would say, and the several techniques, how it's being done. Although one would think, well, look, it's an open tender process and it's a fair chance for everybody, but it's not. You have favoritism and clientelism. The politically connected businesses which win this contract because they're designed specifically for them. Again, a case from Croatia. I came across a report that which says that nearly half of all public contracts there, they go to the state-owned and politically connected enterprises. The second, I would say, observation is that is the overpriced contracts. Typically, projects are inflated by at least 25%. Again, speaking about percentages. Then you have tender specifications which are tailored. They're very narrow, very specific, ensuring that only specific companies can compete or fulfill these requirements. And plus, the conflict of interest, and I mentioned before, this blacklist of the U.S. State Department. Some high-level officials were exactly, I would say, suspected for because of conflict of interest and abuse of power. So plus various emergency situations in the Balkans, they make it possible for the increased use of I would say extraordinary procurement processes. So circumventing regular tender procedures, which leads to further decline in the integrity. I mean, and you have a number of those examples. Now, speaking about corruption practices in these tender procedures, I mean, the different I would say ways how you can do it, and I don't want to teach our students how to basically but I would like them to be aware that basically you can really manipulate the tender process before the selection procedure, during the selection procedure, and even after the selection procedure. And there are all sorts of I'd be happy to provide examples at the end of my intervention how this is being done. So a few words about sorry.
I'm sorry. We're actually at the point for Q&A. I am so sorry.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to provide just one more sentence that about corruption. That it's corruption has two dimensions. There is a demand side and a supply side. So it's a two-way street. Now, addressing basically, corruption on one side, means, a bigger discipline on the actions of public officials. But at the same time, the way to address corruption is really to change, mentality among the business people that corruption, to encourage businesses to really report bribery without fear of retributions, and so that really changed the public perception about it. Thanks a lot for taking maybe too much time, but there is so much to talk about it.
I know it is. It's a topic that that we're always constantly watching over, for sure. So there are a couple of questions. Boydan, do you want to address
Absolutely. Yes, we have. I see two questions, but because we don't have that much time, let's just choose one, which was the first one I saw. This is regarding Mr. Peri Khan. I see a question. Are there specific metrics or aspects in the cumulative corruption score, or is it solely based on citizen perception?
I'm sorry, I have a hard time understanding the question.
I can repeat it, no worries. Are there specific metrics or aspects in the cumulative corruption score, or is it based solely on citizen perception?
Are there specific things they're looking at in that perception score? Is that what the question is?
Yes, absolutely.
No. I mean, in the CPI, which is the original thing, that most people look at, they ask very generic kind of questions about the behavior of people in that country. And again, it's kind of the reason that Aang is the woman who came up with the unbundling stuff did so. And Zoran made a good point too, that one of the criticisms she has about this is that if he mentioned that the richer countries tend to do better on that score. And part of that just has to do with that they're richer countries, and when in the poorer countries, or the developing countries or less developed countries, they tend to have more of these lower level types of corruption that goes on because people are poor. And so that was one of her criticisms of that particular thing, of that particular measure, is that it tends to over measure the lower level kinds of corruption that she mentions. I don't know if that answered the question, but.
It
Oh,
does.
thank you. That was great enough. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you both panelists, Perry, Han, and Zoran. Thank you so much for participating today. Right now, we're at the point in our during our event where we have a break. So just to make sure that with time, I'm going to have the break for 5 minutes. Hopefully that's okay, enough to stretch, get a glass of water if you need it, and then we'll come back in 5 minutes. Very good. So Gary, do you have your slides that you want to?
I do. Can I put them up?
Yeah, give me, once we do the introduction,
Yeah,
then I'll
that's
do the
fine.
stop share. We'll do
Terrific.
that.
Thank you.
All right, great. All right, well, welcome back, everybody, from that short break. Hopefully you just nice little stretch before sitting right back down. So anyway, but this very next section is the entrepreneurial leadership and success 2025 and beyond. Are you ready? Let's hope. All right. All right, so I'm going to introduce Dr. Gary White. He's a university professor of business and leadership and and academic program director for the Master of Science in Organizational Leadership program. Has over 33 years of teaching experience, developed leadership and marketing courses for multiple universities, and owns a business consulting firm helping entrepreneurs since 1991.
And from the counterpart from Macedonia, we have Mr. Stefan Chichavaliev. He is a university professor of social entrepreneurship and senior expert of social economy at DICES Network, with over a decade of experience in social entrepreneurship, sustainable development, and international project management. So welcome to you both. The stage is yours.
Wonderful. And then is it Gary or Stefan that will be going first?
I can go first.
Okay.
Great.
All right, now you'll be able to share.
All righty. Okay. Sorry about that little bit of a delay. Hopefully you can see my screen.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to share with you, first of all, thank you for being here today, attending this really valuable seminar. And I wanted to share with you in the next few minutes some ingredients for success that we see are common amongst all entrepreneurs, all successful entrepreneurs, regardless of location, geography, culture, and so forth. So kind of from the 30,000 foot level here, these are some of the traits that describe, as our research shows, the most successful entrepreneurs. Some of you in our audience may be aspiring entrepreneurs who are contemplating starting a business of your own someday. So a lot of these traits that we'll talk about today may be evident in you, and if they are, that's terrific. That means you too could be a successful entrepreneur. But successful entrepreneurial leadership in the coming years, 2025 and beyond, really transcends traditional business acumen. It really embodies a blend of innovation, resilience, empathy. At its core, it signifies really the ability to envision the future while remaining agile enough, and that's really key, to adapt to rapid changes. In today's modern landscape, business landscape, as we all know, technological advancements are a given, and successful entrepreneurial leaders harness these tools to drive growth and efficiency in their businesses. But though technology isn't the only focus, human-centric leadership is paramount. And what does this mean? This means creating cultures of trust in your organization, inclusivity, continuous learning, where team members, your employees, can feel valued and empowered to contribute their best work. That's really critical. So in the years ahead, entrepreneurial leaders are not just profit-driven, but also purpose-driven. That's important. They recognize the significance of aligning their business goals with social and environmental impact. And of course, this involves things like integrating sustainable practices and ethical considerations into their strategies, and really understanding that the long-term success is intertwined with the well-being of the planet and society overall. A good leader will use their resources and influences to solve real-world problems, driving positive change beyond their immediate industry and beyond just a mere profit motive. One of the things that, of course, all entrepreneurs face is the possibility of inevitable failure. Now, failure in entrepreneurship is not just inevitable, as practically every entrepreneur will tell you, unless they've been very lucky. It's really essential. Now, I know that sounds strange. How can failure be essential? That seems to go against common wisdom. But we see, again, our research shows it's the crucible, really, in which successful entrepreneurs are forged. To handle failure effectively, an entrepreneur has to first reframe it. Instead of seeing failure as a dead end, it needs to be viewed as a learning opportunity. This mindset tends to shift, or this mindset shift is really critical. It allows entrepreneurs to extract valuable lessons from their missteps and apply them to all of their future endeavors. Along with that, resilience is the cornerstone of navigating failure. And you'll hear that word come up a lot as time goes on, as we talk about successful entrepreneurship, resilience. Entrepreneurs have to develop thick skin, understanding that setbacks are really a part of the journey. This resilience comes from maintaining a long-term vision and not letting short-term failures derail that bigger picture. It's about persistence when you come right down to it, and the ability to bounce back stronger and more informed. Self-reflection, by the way, is another vital tool. Entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, analyze what went wrong and why. Was it a flaw in the business model? Was it some sort of misjudgment that I had of market demand? Some kind of an operational inefficiency? By identifying the root cause, entrepreneurs take concrete steps to avoid repeating the same mistakes. And in addition, seeking external feedback is crucial. When I'm advising entrepreneurs and helping them set up their businesses and run their businesses, one of the things that I insist that they do is form a team of advisors around them. Entrepreneurs tend to often operate in an echo chamber, but constructive criticism from mentors, peers, and even, yes, customers can provide new perspectives and insights. And this feedback helps help them refine their strategies and their approaches. And also with handling failure, it's also important as a successful entrepreneur to manage your emotions. Let's face it, failure can be emotionally taxing, and it's easy to become demoralized. So entrepreneurs need to cultivate emotional intelligence, which involves recognizing and managing their own emotions, as well as understanding and empathizing with others. That's very important. So I guess the big question is, what does building a sustainable business in 2025 and beyond look like? Well, it entails a multifaceted approach that integrates both environmental, social, and economic responsibilities. The focus really is on creating long-term value, not only for shareholders, but for all stakeholders to the business, including employees, customers, communities, the planet itself. At the core of a sustainable business going forward is that undying commitment to environmental stewardship. This means adopting practices that, for example, minimize carbon footprints, conserve resources, protect the ecosystem. Businesses can invest in renewable energy, reduce waste through efficient production processes, and embrace economic principles which emphasize reusing and recycling materials to extend their life cycle. Also, social sustainability. It's equally important. A sustainable business fosters that culture of inclusivity that we talked about, as well as fairness and respect. This includes ensuring things like fair wages, safe working conditions, opportunities for professional development and growth for your employees. But at the same time, it also means engaging with communities and contributing positively to their development, that social responsibility initiatives, and also economic sustainability. It revolves around creating a resilient business model that can withstand the inevitable market fluctuations and ensure long-term profitability. So, this really requires innovative strategies such as diversifying product offerings and investing considerably in research and development, and of course also maintaining a strong customer relationship. So building a sustainable business means really balancing short-term gains with long-term goals and ensuring the business can thrive into the future. And then also transparency and accountability are really foundational, we see. Businesses need to communicate their sustainability efforts openly, providing stakeholders with clear, honest information about their practices and their progress. Regular reporting on sustainability goals and achievements builds trust, really, and it encourages ongoing improvement. So, lastly, here's some good advice. Well, aspiring entrepreneurs embarking on your journey, let's face it, it can be thrilling as well as daunting. First and foremost, really, it's important to embrace the power of vision. Having a clear, compelling vision will guide all of your decisions, and also, as I found, inspire those around you. It's kind of like your North Star, keeping you focused when the going gets tough. Also, it's important to start small but think big. Start small but think big. It's essential to have grand aspirations. That's great, but at the same time, breaking them down into manageable steps that will make the journey a little less overwhelming and more achievable. We have to remember that expression, Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither will your business. And resilience, as I mentioned further, is really your greatest asset. As an entrepreneur, you'll face many setbacks and failures. These aren't signs to quit, as conventional wisdom might suggest, but rather pivot and adapt. Each failure really is a stepping stone to success, provided you learn from it and, of course, and adjust your business strategy accordingly. And also networking. We can't forget about networking. Network ruthlessly, building relationships with mentors, peers, industry leaders, can open many doors and provide valuable advice and offer support when needed. So don't be afraid to ask for help or insight. Everyone started somewhere. Also staying customer focused. Your business exists to solve problems or fulfill needs. So it's important to always keep your customers at the heart of what you do. Seek their feedback, very important. Understand their pain points and continuously refine your offering and your business strategy to better serve them. And also leveraging technology to your advantage. As we know, technology is constantly changing. So today's successful entrepreneur, and certainly well into the future, is going to be able to use data analytics very effectively to understand market trends, social media to build your brand, and automation to streamline your operations. So staying ahead of the tech trend gives you a competitive edge. And also financial literacy, understanding your finances from cash flow to profit margins and budgeting. Too many entrepreneurs are afraid of the numbers part of running the business, but it's a critical management tool. And in my experience, many businesses fail due to poor financial management. So you really have to make this a priority. And lastly, stay curious and humble. The business landscape is ever evolving, ever changing, and it'll continue to change at a faster pace as time goes on. The best entrepreneurs are lifelong learners who stay ahead and open to new ideas and perspectives. So that's really critical.
Oh, actually, I want to make sure we have time for Stefan too.
Perfect timing, because
Okay, great.
just wanted to share with you, perhaps we'll make these slides available, some valuable resources
Sure,
to
absolutely.
help you be successful as an entrepreneur in the
Thank
years
you.
ahead. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Gary. All right, Stefan, and then you could do stop share there. Thank you.
Yeah, hi everyone, and thank you for the invitation to be at this panel and the international conversations. I think it's a great event and we should do it more often. Students will benefit from it. What can I say more than hasn't already been said of the overview that Professor White has already shared, but I would go then to the more practical points that entrepreneurship, leadership, it's changing because of the global scenario is changing. So in the last years, we have seen drastic changes of being from industrial mindset to being a purpose-driven mindset, and this is really important. If you think about entrepreneurial leadership before COVID and after COVID, it changed drastically. Now we have new generations that are more focused on purpose-driven businesses, and when they go to find a job, they ask, okay, and what we will achieve with this? And how we will do this, and what is the impact that we will leave behind? So these are the new generations that are coming, are more aware of the impact that they leave with their workings and with their companies and with their organizations. So they ask, okay, what is the effect of this production line or this production area? And this is something that it's really important. I can just share in the data that from a study from 2023, so last year, Acom Communications found that 86% of consumers are more likely to purchase from companies committed to social and environmental causes. So of course, I'm a professor of social entrepreneurship, and I'm taking this approach that companies should blur the lines. Now we have the blurred lines of being, okay, profit oriented, but then we have the social purpose a bit, as like Ben & Jerry's ice cream, for example, that reinvest 7% of their income or their profit in social and environmental causes. We have Tom's Shoes, for example, which is not shoes anymore, but everything else. You buy one and one is donated. So these are the kind of business, and this Patagonia as well, for example, that they always add 1% of their income into environmental causes. So these are the organizations that will emerge more and more, and the companies will go further in that area. The second thing about entrepreneurial leadership is that the world seeks it, asks for it, but also regulates it. So we have the corporate social responsibility directives that also provide for the companies, okay, if you want to have a social impact, an environmental impact, we will reduce the taxes for you. And also this is something that is the focus of the companies, but also not only tax benefits, it is also about the client benefits. So if you want to be customer focused, the customers and clients ask for it. I would go with clients, not customers, because customers are one-time thing. Clients, you're building relationship with them, and this is what you want within a business. So if you want to be an entrepreneurial leader, don't think about having only your own company, but you can be an entrepreneurial leader within an academia, within a university, within an organization, within an NGO, whatever you do, it's a mindset that you need to follow, and it's not the acts that you want to do or only having the profit of it. So it's how you go through it. And of course, we are living in a digital era, in informative era, so you have to make use of the data, and you have to learn how to adapt. And this is the thing that when you see the data and if it's coming as positive, then you continue doing the good thing. If not, then you pivot and you change. And also being tech savvy, it's really important now, because with the explosion of AI, of course, it has been developing for the last 3 decades, but in the last year has exploded the generative AI that companies now use. And this is crucial for the development and being future oriented. Then it's the, I would say, handling pressure. When you think about handling pressure and handling failure, it's not one and done. It is something you live with every day. We have, in academia, we have failures of being rejected for publishing a paper. In entrepreneurial world, we have clients has chosen another company. Public procurement has gone bad and they went with another service provider. So these failures are every day. And this is something that should not be seen as a failure, but it's a detour. I mean, learn from it. It's a moment that you cannot get back. It's one and done. Learn from it and move forward. There is no point of keeping that in that area. My first company I built my first company in 22. I sold it 6 years after. The second company I built, I developed, didn't went that well. Now it's stagnating, it's doing nothing, right? So then I moved to Brussels and I opened another company, which is a Sustainable Entrepreneurship and Innovation Center, a consultancy company for social and circular economy organizations. So in this area, we are still moving forward. You're always embracing it as a learning opportunity and move forward. There is no point of looking back. You just learn, move forward. Take the advice, move forward. Then it's building a sustainable business as the third point. Sustainability now, it's a buzzword and it's a trendy modern thing. But honestly, building a sustainable business isn't just about the bottom line. It's about the triple bottom line, right? The social, the environmental, and also the economical contributions that you have in the society. So it's about ethical practices, environmental responsibility, and creating a positive impact in the world. This is what is needed. So now we have seen that if something that COVID has showed us, that the world health and economic systems crumbled within 1 year, even less, with 3 months of quarantine, we have failed and left people behind. How many casualties did we have? I mean, I wouldn't go even in that area, but I would say that the socially driven businesses now will thrive because we have found out that businesses can also contribute to society, not only economically, but also socially and environmentally. And then talking about technology. What is there to say about technology's role now in entrepreneurship that we haven't seen so far? I mean, the world is so dynamic, so vibrant. And after COVID, I mean, we are in a constant loop that everything is repeating itself. And now with the market access, it has become even more accessible than ever. Exploiting economic opportunities. Just see how many teenagers are millionaires now because they are being influencers or YouTubers or having products. Just taking reselling, buying from Walmart for cheaper and selling it for online for higher prices. Just think of that. And this is the communication and the collaboration has become so efficient and so easy to come. I mean, even now we are connected every day with the whole world. And this is something that technology's role in entrepreneurship is. This is not your enemy, it's your superpower. You can use it to scale your impact, to scale your profit, but also create the impact. And this is providing you the tools to reach global audience. A recent study by McKinsey showed that AI could potentially automate up to 30% of the current work activities globally. So this rapid technological shift is reshaping industries, including the economy and business. Then if you want to foster innovation within teams, first you have to surround yourself with innovative people, with creative people that will think outside the box, will think differently than you, right? If you're going into the room and you're the most intelligent person in the room, get out, because you need to learn from the people and from your team, right? Don't be scared of having more intelligent people than you in the room. Be proud that you're in the room with them and learn from them, because this is how you get better. So looking for innovation, don't look for innovation in your own room. Look for innovation outside. My motto is always, I go to one conference, at least one conference a year, specifically for my expertise, which is social entrepreneurship and research, and research and development, but also business-wise. And then at least one that is in general about the economy, about business, that will scale my creativity in methods, in approaches, in strategies, that will broaden my horizons and my network as well with people that are not working in my area. So it is a continuous learning. I mean, it doesn't end. It doesn't end. Even this year, I went to a Harvard Business School for a course just to update my let's say portfolio with knowledge and my mind database with information that are from another country, from another region, from another place, but also to speak with brilliant professors because we're colleagues, and to further collaborations. So to cut the story short, advice for aspiring entrepreneurs, I would say, maybe it's a cliche, but you need to find your passion. Why passion? Because it's related to resilience and perseverance, as Professor White said. If you're not passionate about something, you will quickly say, oh, this is not for me. You know, entrepreneurial, the life of entrepreneurs is really hard at the beginning. Of course, at the end, we see all these big names and we see, oh, what crazy life they have. But honestly, it's the journey of 10 to 15, 20 years that they have passed with. And if they haven't been resilient and persevere, all these fails and feedbacks, critical feedbacks that they have received over the years, there won't be a Bill Gates, there won't be Elon Musk, and so on. Although they have had a different start anyways. So this is a different point. But you have, and also due diligence. It's huge importance. Do your own research. There is no idea, and don't fall in love with your idea, because I guess you will find at least 10 people who did your idea globally. So find those people, talk with them if possible. And now we have the technology to do this, right? So I will stop here and never give up. Thank you.
That's awesome. Never give up. That's good advice. Thank you so much. I don't think we have a Q&A posted in there, but I do have a question though, actually for both of you. So when it comes to failure, what did it teach you personally? We'll go with you, Stefan. What did it teach you about yourself?
It taught me to be more patient, tolerant, calm, and to not not submit to stress. Stress is ever existing. I mean, if you're thinking about entrepreneurial way, you also have to talk about your family as well, right? It affects them as well. Being always outside and networking, being across. In the last 2 months, I have been at home maybe for the last 5 or 6 days. From Ireland to Montenegro, from Poland to Greece, it has been a journey that I thought it is a lifetime. Why? Because I haven't seen my son, and this is something that is always puts a stress on me. I don't see my son, and he's growing up every day. A new word, a new thing is happening. So this is one thing. And if you submit to stress, everything becomes a burden. Everything becomes a burden. So be calm, be patient and tolerant. Things will happen if you work hard. Hard work is the only indicator for everything that you will do. Talent is just something that you have to push you through over the edge, probably, but hard work cannot be changed for anything. So work hard, be tolerant and patient, and things will come. And don't submit to stress, because everything can be settled if logistically and with discipline and logistics.
Thank you. That's good advice. Dr. Gary White?
Thank you, Trish. I would add to that, the remedy to failure is resilience. And I know from personal experience over the past 35 years of starting and ending a number of businesses of my own, and helping entrepreneurs into the hundreds now of starting and launching their own businesses. As I mentioned in my presentation, failure is really inevitable from time to time. And it's a good thing. You know, we tend to, especially in our culture, look at failure as being devastating. But it really is a valuable lesson. And when you learn to be resilient from those failures and use those as learning opportunities to improve your strategy the next time, and then learn from subsequent failures and make additional improvements, it really makes a world of difference in your ultimate success as an entrepreneur and as a business owner. So failure, yes, good. Resilience on top of that failure is the medicine that's needed.
All right. Thank you so much. That's fantastic advice from Stefan and Dr. White. Thank you so much. All right. And so the next portion here of our presentation, it is about artificial intelligence and how it's impacting HR, and it's impacting it dramatically. So I am going to introduce Dr. Sherry Adams. She is a university professor, HR consultant, and a global learning and development professional. She has over 15 years of experience teaching, leadership, and organizational development. She specializes in coaching and team leadership, and she also holds advanced certifications in coaching and currently pursuing an MCC.
And it is my pleasure to announce Ms. Angela Kostova-Trpeska, which is a product owner for global tech and strategic skills at Deutsche Telekom Global Business Solutions Iberia. She has over 20 years of experience in managing international HR and IT projects, and she's an expert in using agile methodologies. Welcome to you both.
Thank you. All right. And I believe one of you have a PowerPoint you would like to share, right?
And Angela's going to share. Yes.
I would like to share, please.
Thank you.
So I hope you can see it now.
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me just make it a full screen. Okay. So then welcome everyone. I know we have this pretty complicated task to keep your attention now, being the last speakers, but we will try because we really have an interesting topic, and both Sherry and I will try to share with you our knowledge and expertise on the topic, giving you a few interesting tips, I hope, on how to really leverage now the new technologies and what you can do as you enter the job market. So having
Excuse me, I'm
said
sorry for
that,
interrupting. I think we cannot see it full screened. I think it's
Or do
frozen.
you, or do you want me to share it? Because I have the copy.
you can, if you wish. I think I shared it full screen, but for whatever reason,
I think
maybe.
it's spinning.
Yeah, I don't think it's spinning. I
Not-
think it's frozen on the
I
PowerPoint
think
presentation.
so.
Okay, maybe my
I can
internet.
share it. Is that okay
Although
if I share it?
yeah. I'm in an
Okay.
internet company, so it should work well, but
You never
maybe
sometimes
know.
it doesn't, you know. When I'm in the office, it doesn't work. When
Maybe
I'm
you
at
could
home,
try
it works.
turning it off and then turning it on the share screen, but on the full screen PowerPoint presentation. I think because you started it on the PowerPoint and then you zoomed in, it's stuck on the previous one.
Do
So
you
maybe
want?
we could try
Okay, but maybe
Yeah.
Trish can share it. Let's just speed it up
All right.
because
Maybe what you can do is unshare. There we go. All right.
Right,
I
great.
will definitely pull that up for you because I do love your PowerPoint that both of you put together.
So as we transition slides, Trish, I will just kind of give you a heads up. Next slide
Perfect.
is what we'll go ahead and say to go ahead and transition to the next slide. As we're making that smooth transition to the PowerPoint and we're talking about AI, I would like to challenge everybody with a question before we begin. Ask yourself in this couple of minutes we have left, what is one thing that I can start doing differently? And I mean actionable, because any type of learning should be actionable. So anything that you can start doing differently today. So what's that one thing that you can start doing differently? All right, so I'm Dr. Sherry Adams. I'll go first. Trish, transition to the first slide.
And it's okay if we go over. I want to give you guys ample time
Oh,
to.
that's okay. So the first slide. So similar to everybody on this call and what Dr. White talked about, I am a continuous learner as well. I take that very personally and professionally because I need to earn the right to lead by continuing to learn in whatever form or fashion that is. So in that continuous learning, I recently attended a Work Human conference. It talks about engagement, business strategies, that human-centric approach. But one thing that resonated with me with one of the presenters said is that AI is not going to take my job. It's the people who understand and leverage AI will. Truly resonated for me. Boom moment. All right, let's start full gear, figuring out what AI looks like. So in upscaling myself as an AI professional, even with 20 years of experience, I am continuously reading. So little fun fact, only 12% of the population reads anymore. So please read books. So one of the books that I recently read was Future of Work of HI and HR. In it was Gartner's hype cycle. You'll see it on your screen right now. So everybody take a look at the cycle. Go ahead and read it. You know, the beginning, the peak, the trough, and then so forth to give you an idea of what it looks like. So this framework will help you understand where we're currently at, where AI fits in the broader landscape of invention. So currently AI with us has not reached its peak yet. We have not reached the peak of inflated expectations, which means we're far from the plateau of productivity. So the peak of inflated expectations is a stage where excitement around as AI is at the highest. Everything is shiny and new. Organizations are often believe AI will deliver these transformative results overnight, but these expectations frequently outpace the technology and the technology's current capabilities, which is setting us up for failure. Because this enthusiasm and this excitement about this new shiny thing can quickly turn into frustration as early adopters confront implementation challenges, hurdles, and limitations. So this shift from excitement to skepticism happens when that media starts to fade away a little bit. Users face real challenges and the market starts to correct itself, forcing everyone to take a more grounded look at what's possible, that realistic perspective and point of view. So that leads to the trough of disillusionment. I love these words. Disillusionment. In the stage, the hype dies down and the reality of AI challenges such things as biases, gaps in technology, unfulfilled promises, and that's when everything starts to become a little more clear. You talk about failure, so that failure will lead to more clarity. So this phase is critical for the reflection time. So it gives organizations an opportunity to pause, reflect, and focus on those realistic applications, solving existing issues and building trust in AI's potential. So understanding where AI fits in this cycle helps AI professionals such as myself make smarter decisions, avoiding failure from overhyped solutions, and set practical long-term goals for successful integration. So HR is doing a great job right now. For those individuals that are experiencing right now, we're doing a great job. We're being realistic in our approach when it comes to limiting using AI in a realistic way for to limit those administrative functions that HR generally handles when it comes to recruitment, onboarding, and training and development. So as we continue to discuss AI, me and Angela continue to discuss AI in this couple of minutes. Keep this image in mind as we explore how AI supports the workforce, especially when it comes to expectations, biases, employee resistance, and it opens door for further learning. So I'll turn the time over to Angela.
Yeah, so what I want to say, I fully agree with Sherry, but to kind of build on that, yes, it is true that at the moment we are maybe overloaded, overwhelmed with a lot of AI, especially Gen AI tools. And I just wanted to put two things into context for you as well, coming from business and directly seeing all these things in business. I work for a telecom company, so we need to be very fast in adopting the technology. As you can see, 70% of the telecom companies are exploring Gen AI. And I agree with Sherry that exploring means we are touching everything and anything. And that at the moment, there is not extremely clear strategy in where to go. And I think that's normal because you need to experiment with anything that is new. You know, remember the plane. Nobody just started flying with the jumbo jet we have today. They needed to experiment to come to a jumbo jet. It's normal when new things are introduced. But it's also very interesting that healthcare and telecoms companies are the ones that are leading this adaptation of Gen AI tools. Why is that? I mean, because the telecom companies are obviously the tech, they have to be in tech. Because telecom is not a business only of having a network to give you a telephone. I mean, that time is long gone. Of course, the telecoms have the infrastructure to give you internet to your house, which automatically means to get you all the services that you can benefit from that have AI behind it. You cannot have Netflix without a telecom company, and many you cannot buy Amazon without a telecom company, you know. Think about it. So that's why we have to be leaders in these things. And then the healthcare is also extremely interesting. And I think this is just my theory, that this is because of the amount of data they as well need to process. And especially AI has been really helping. That's what we are seeing in this past few years in diagnostics, because an AI can much better put data together, analyze it, and then draw a conclusion, provided that the algorithm is good and that the data set was correct. Sherry will talk a little bit more about that, because with AI, as much as it's extremely exciting, we have to be careful as to how we use it. We really, really need to use it responsibly, and we need to use it ethically. And what we are seeing is that because it was such a boom, we just exploded with it. And I usually compare it to social media. We are just now seeing the bad effects of social media on youngsters and how it affects their brain. Nobody really thought about it. We just were so excited. Ha, 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 you know, it's here. The same is happening with Gen AI. And I think that's a normal phase that we as human beings have to go through. And in parallel to that, let me just quickly tell you what is the trend, where the skills are that we need as human beings in 2025 will be. And I'll just pause for a few seconds for you to read. Just read the magenta, the pink things, not the whole text. So I don't know if you're surprised, but as you can see on my right-hand side slide, out of the 4 skills that I'm giving you, 3 are human skills. that have absolutely nothing to do with technology. And I don't know if this is surprising to you. It's not surprising to me, being in HR and being in a telco company. Yes, we need to understand modern technologies. Yes, you need to know how ChatGPT works, LLMs, neural networks. But the human adaptability, creative thinking, and adaptability to constantly learn, just as the machine learns, will never ever go away. And these are the skills that we will continuously need to build and learn on. And you will tell me now, how do I learn resilience? Yeah, you can learn it. Just as you can practice your muscles in a gym, you can practice your brain. It is a skill that you learn, and I can absolutely certify this. Creative thinking as well, understanding the technologies, yeah, fine, but active learning. What does active learning means? I see it now with the kids. I have 16-year-old twins. It's really taking me such a hard time to explain to them what does it mean to actively learn something. Sorry to say this, but the generation I see now has lost the ability to actively learn because they want everything to be in an instant, in 3 seconds. Well, sorry to speed it up to you. You cannot learn everything in this world in 3 seconds. You have to be a little bit more patient, and you really need to engage your brain, and you need to practice. And ChatGPT is not the almighty. It will not tell you every secret on earth. 10,000 times it makes a mistake. And that's why I will hand over to Sherry to just tell you how biased AI can be and how many mistakes and hallucinations it can make. It just told me the other day, based on analyzing my resume, that I'm a university professor. It really was trying to convince me that I am, which I've never been in my life. So, you know what I mean? You really need to cross-check your facts and do not believe what it tells you. And that is your ability to actively learn. So I'm handing over now to Sherry to just talk a little bit more about why is it important to use reasonably AI tools, especially in HR, and how to avoid biases when we work with AI tools in HR.
So thank you, Angela. So I'll go ahead and start there. So when you talk about biases and that human element, you think AI, okay, AI can have all the answers, has all the solutions. But at the bottom of your screen, let me highlight that first. It's called builder bias. So if you think about AI, AI didn't just appear by itself, right? There's that human element. You will never, ever, ever, ever get rid of that human element. There's that builder bias integrated in it, meaning that the creators influence the AI design. Those algorithms are created by humans, right? Everything is, so it still has that bias in it. So please keep that in mind. It does not have all the answers, and there's errors, a lot of errors in AI. So when it comes to ensuring that it's bias-free, especially in an HR environment, make sure that you check for biases. And I put 3 on the screen for some suggestions as how to audit for bias. One of them is to conduct pre-deployment bias testing, pre-test, right? Post-test. We're researchers, we're learners, figure out what that looks like. Don't set yourself up for failure. Go ahead and conduct that first and use that diversified data set. The previous professors were talking about analytics. Use those analytics, use those data to go ahead and do those pre-deployment bias testing. And then use real world scenarios, not this fictitious scenarios. Use something that's currently in your work environment. Make it realistic. Second one, implement ongoing audits, meaning scheduled, routine, right? Something that's built into your culture that you do annually, quarterly, to ensuring that you're meeting those organizational equity goals. And then engage independent third-party auditors. The thing about organizational culture, it is your organizational culture, so there is bias in it. So go ahead and ask for a third-party vendor to come in for that diversified perspective, that unique view. Enhance transparency and governance is the third one that I put on there. Create an oversight team that's responsible for monitoring AI systems. I read recently that in 20 years, 80% of jobs that are currently now will have changed in some role or responsibility. So why not create a new team for monitoring AI? That could be a new role. Publicly disclose the methodologies and potential impacts. So people are fearful of AI tools and the unknown because our big, brilliant, beautiful brains prefer what's accepted and familiar. And this is truly not familiar. So be transparent and use those public ways to make people aware of what's going on. And like I said, be aware of builder bias. If you take anything away, take that away. Regular audits are key to keeping AI tools fair, reliable, and effective for diverse communities. By prioritizing bias-free technologies, organizations can build trust, win, enhance user experience, win, create a more inclusive future, win, win, win. All right, next slide, please. And it's me once again. So we'll go ahead and talk about overcoming resistance and building that trust. Like I said, so the predominant emotion in most people is fear, fear of the unknown, fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear, fear, fear. So how do we overcome that resistance with our big, beautiful brain that prefers accepting and familiar and resist change? And how do we build trust in AI-driven processes? So AI's processes can be challenging because individuals often worry about how these changes might impact their roles and decision-making, because I know I do. Building trust is essential and starts with clear communication, transparency, and showing how AI supports rather than replaces human contributions. So on your screen, I have 3 strategies to overcome resistance and build trust within your organization as an HR professional. And we've heard this a million times. Communication is the key, right? So be transparent in your communication, clearly explain AI, keeping humans at the role, at the center of everything that's going on, and share real world success stories. We actually get an oxytocin, we get that happy, that good feeling where we hear those success stories. Second one, training and education with this particular friend of mine. Hands-on workshop. People are kinesthetic learners. They love to try new things, and give them an opportunity to have easy access to resources, and gamify it if you can, make it fun. And somebody else talked about human-centric implementation, making sure that you complement the human strengths, right, of empathy and creativity. And I love how Angela pointed out those skills, because AI is making an impact on social capital, right? Those human skills. And that's what's becoming more and more essential, especially with AI-driven technology. And make sure you hold regular feedback sessions. Hey, how is people feeling? Do those engagement. After COVID, we had those pulse surveys. Nobody's doing those anymore. We probably should in an AI environment. Let's do a quick pulse check. How is everybody doing? So lastly, don't overlook the impact of technostress. I was going to ask if anybody's ever heard of technostress. It is actually a thing. It arises when people feel overwhelmed with new technology. So remember that as well. So overcoming resistance to AI starts with building trust, transparency, education, collaboration, all wins. And by addressing and highlighting the value of AI, how is this going to benefit me? AI brings to both employees and the organizations. Leaders can create a smoother transition and assure long-term success. Win. All right, I turn it over to Angela.
So I just want to, before I go to the next slide, which will be our last slide, and we will wrap up our conversation. Before I go there, I just want to share with you a few examples as to what we do in the company. And to explain them, I just want to put it into a context. I work in a company that has 200,000 employees on almost every continent except for Australia. And Africa. We used to have a company in Africa, but not yet. So imagine the immense workforce we have. And basically, our workforce, majority of them still are over 43 years old. And last year, we needed to start introducing Gen AI tools. I was the lucky one to get that task to come up with a program of skilling on basically introducing to the workforce the Gen AI and what it is and how to use it and all this, not to be fearful of it. What can I do with it? to be that honest, the first time they gave it to me, I was like, what the hell is this? Like, how is this Gen AI different from AI? I mean, why are they making such a big deal of it? You know, everybody knows what AI is. So basically what we did was exactly what Sherry was just talking about. We used all of the summer of 23 to have talks with psychologists about diminishing fear and embracing the change. They were free, they were offered to everybody. You could just come, you could talk about whatever you wanted. Why are you afraid? Why do you think this is complicated? And by the way, our HQ is in Germany. So you can imagine how regulated we are there with data privacy, with whatnot, and how cautious people are to even put their private email or yet alone business email in ChatGPT. Where's this going to end up? What are they going to do with the data? So there were a lot of questions. And that's why we said before we do any skilling, we're just going to talk about this thing and show with the pioneers, with the people who are really hooked on it, you know, some easy cases, what you can do with it, how this can help you. And then we built from there. Today, we are at a stage where people are asking us for concrete prompting practices and learning how to really do Gen AI in their work, concrete work. So in a year and a half, we managed more or less to bring the workforce to applicative thinking. And again, let me repeat, we have majority of people over 43. So any change, especially change in technology, is a little bit complicated, but I still think you can do it with the right people, doing it slowly, introducing it, and really diminishing their fear and assuring them that we are doing in a proper way and data is protected. And we were gradually introducing tools to use. First it was ChatGPT, now we can use Perplexity. So slowly to assure that, you know, we've checked and cross-checked regarding data and ethical usage of the tools, because I cannot say enough how important it is that you use these things ethically. So that was one example. And another one that we are doing currently, and that leads me to this whole essential skills that you need. But it's not just this particular skills. What we are seeing as a trend currently, and I think AI initiated it to a large extent, is that more and more organizations in the near future will move from having a standard job contract and a standard job description. Like I signed a contract and I stay there forever and I have a salary grade and a salary range and da-da-da. This will, in the near future, not be the case, because the companies are really slowly but moving towards skill-based organizations. What does that mean? That you have a database of the skills of the employees. So I'm not matched to a job position on a job contract. I just have my skills in the system, and then the company matches me to a given project at a given time that require these skills. What does this mean? That I have to constantly work on my skills because otherwise I will not have a job. And that is my message to you. Really work on your skills. Don't really think about what profession you will do, how much money you will make. The money will come in and your passion and your will come in. If you have the right set of skills and if you really constantly work, remember I said constant active learning. If you constantly learn and adjust your skills, you will have the money, you will have the pleasure, you will have the jobs. It is how it works. And which are the skills that we are seeing currently, apart from what I told you on the first slide, to work with the tools? Obviously, AI literacy. By this, I don't mean using ChatGPT. I mean, you actually understand how it works and why you get a bad result when you get a bad result. Because I still have people where I need to explain that ChatGPT is not solving mathematical problems. Not because it's stupid, but because it's an LLM. It was trained on text and on language. It's not trained to do mathematical tasks, so it will be wrong sooner or later. So please don't use it. So you need to understand, you have to have this basic literacy. And I'm sad to say many people don't have it, especially in the younger generation. Why? Because you instantly want to use it. You don't have time to read the manual.
So please take the time to educate yourself on how these things work. Then the prompting skills, I think this is the easier part because you can learn how to talk to a machine. But again, it's a trial and error. And the more you try it, the better you get. We've talked about the critical thinking. And here, what I mean is AI hallucinates. It gives you wrong information. It invents things, but they're so well invented that you think it's true. If you do not cross-check your facts, you end up with a lot of nonsense. So really critically think and search for cross-check your facts. Really cross-check your facts and your data. Then, of course, data literacy, like how is data collected? What do we do with the data? What is a correct data set? How to assure that we don't have biases and so on. And then the last advice, and I really finish here, nowadays, skilling is easy. You should have seen me going through university. I will not even tell you how I studied in Macedonia in whenever, I was then lucky to be educated in the States. So that changed a little bit my perspective on learning. But still nowadays, you have 10,000 free and budget-friendly courses online. Just Google, search for them, or simply ask ChatGPT. I want to be AI literate in 3 weeks. Please give me a plan and give me resources how to do it. Of course, you need to cross-check then whether it gave you a correct plan, but it will definitely give you an idea. And with that, please use AI responsibly, ethically, and safely, and always, always mind your personal data and what you put into the AI engines, because we still don't know where this data ends up in the end.
Yeah.
Thanks, and that's from us.
That's fantastic. I mean, yeah, you don't want to have proprietary information from your company just out there, and then now ChatGPT owns it. That's not safe whatsoever. Yeah. Voidon, do you have any questions?
I saw no questions in here, and I thought it was perfectly presented by them. I found this very interesting. It was something that I am deeply interested into because it is something that is ever evolving in this ever evolving landscape that we are in. So it was very informative, and thank you. Thank you to you both.
Thank you. And I agree that it can't do a lot of the math problems because my son, we decided just for fun, he's in 6th grade, for fun, we put in a math question that he got from his teacher, and it produced the wrong answer.
Absolutely. I've tried that too. And it gave me, I tried it on just summing up numbers. He couldn't do anything like that.
But do you know why? That is the question. That's what I said. Do you know why it produces a lot? If you are AI literate and if you read the manual, then you would have known and you wouldn't even ask that question, because you know immediately that it will not give you the answer unless you give it for fun just to prove a case.
Yeah, because my friend came to me and he's like, your math is wrong. And I'm like, why is it wrong? I asked ChatGPT, I'm like, you really think ChatGPT over me using the calculator? He's like, yeah, I'm for sure. And we tried it and he's like, okay, you're right.
Yeah. Oh, I know there's so many stories that are out there all the time about there was a lawyer one time that submitted a court case and he used ChatGPT and it produced all of these inaccurate cases, like cases that don't even exist, and he submitted it. And so he lost his license. So yeah, not a smart move.
With that being said, I think we have come to the closing minutes of this meeting. We would love to ask you guys to, if you have the time, fill the survey that is on the screen right now by Dr. Trish. That would be amazing. And from us at the University American College, I would love to thank you for this opportunity of this partnership. And we hope that this is just the first of many. And from one Delta Mu Delta to another, we thank you for the great time we had today. And we appreciate everyone that joined us today. And we hope to see you at the next one.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. My co-moderator, Voidon, thank you so much. It was a privilege to be a co-moderator with you today. And I just want to say a special thank you to Elena, Natalia, Shamika Davenport, Cindy Solari, And all of our panelists, of course, and Jeff Arnold being here, our deans from both institutions. I hope I'm not forgetting anybody else. It feels like, the Oscars right now, trying to get all the thank yous out.
Absolutely.
But anybody and everybody that had some sort of part in this, I just want to say thank you so much. Oh, and Tricia Sigler too, for allowing us to use her Zoom link. That was very helpful. So I'm going to leave this survey up for another few seconds here. And it's going to take you less than a minute to fill it out.
I do see we have a late question. I'm not sure if I just saw it from an anonymous panelist, but I'm not sure if Miss Angela is still here with us. We have a question. I'm not sure how much you can tell them because this might be company secret. What are the future plans for Deutsche Telekom?
No, I'm here, but I can tell you whatever I can tell. Tell me the question.
The question is, what are the future plans for Deutsche Telekom? I suppose this is in AI use. It's in that context.
You mean the future plans? I mean, I don't know. Of course, we have a strategy, and that is known. And the strategy is basically to be the leading telco in the industry, meaning to stay competitive and to stay, to have our market share and so on. And this, of course, basically means, and we've been doing that for a while, I think everybody that is our client or that follows the company knows that over the years, especially in the last 10, since we had Tim Hedgers as a CEO, we have really transformed the business from mere telecom business, offering telephony and internet, towards offering real ICT solutions and now, of course, AI solutions. So that's a standard known strategy. I think it's not really secretive. And yeah, we're working hard on that. And part of it is, of course, my job, really skilling and preparing the workforce to embrace that, because we need to adapt to the needs of the clients.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Angela. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. All right, I'll leave this up for a little bit longer and then we will adjourn.
I think I need to go because
you go for it.
7:30 and I'm in the office. I think I'm the last one.
Apologies for that.
And it's raining terribly outside. So I'm not, I just looked outside of the window. It's pouring outside.
Oh.
But luckily I live close to the office, so
that's good. Hopefully you have an umbrella.
It won't be a long walk for me. Yeah. I don't know. Okay.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure, and let's do this again.
Okay.